The beating happens at the Esplanade construction site in Season 5, Episode 9, Unidentified Black Males, and it starts the way a lot of trouble starts in that world, with guys killing time on a job that is half real construction and half a social club. Finn is there on his first stretch of work, watching these older guys sit around, joke, complain, and treat the whole place like it belongs to them. Little Paulie is doing what he always does, trying to be funny, trying to fit, trying to keep his name alive in a room where respect is oxygen. Eugene is sitting right there with them, and at first it feels like normal ball breaking. It is small talk mixed with cheap shots, the kind of stuff they do all day, because boredom is constant and cruelty is entertainment. Then little Paulie pushes it into the one zone that is never safe. He uses a falsetto voice and makes an innuendo that implies Eugene is a homosexual. It is not a smart joke, not in that place and not in that crew, because it is not just an insult. It is a label. It is a rumor starter. It is the kind of thing that once it is said out loud can turn into something that gets repeated, and repetition is how truth gets built in their world. Eugene's face changes instantly. He does not laugh it off. He does not try to top it with a better line. He does not warn him twice. He snaps, and you can see it in the speed of it. He comes out of the chair, smashes a glass bottle over little Paulie's head, and then keeps going, kicking him down while blood starts pouring from his face. The beating is fast and ugly, and what makes it worse is that it happens in front of a civilian kid who was already uncomfortable being there. Finn is not watching two guys joke around anymore. He is watching the rules of the place get enforced with blunt force, and he is learning in real time that this is not a workplace, it is a territory. Right after, the cleanup is just as telling as the violence. Vito steps in and tells Eugene to take the rest of the day off, like Eugene just lost his temper in an office and needs to cool down. Eugene asks about little Paulie, and Vito waves it away by blaming it on a couple of black guys. Basically, doing the classic Sopranos move of pushing violence onto unidentified black males, so nobody has to deal with the real story. Little Paulie is left hurt and humiliated, Eugene walks off, and the job site goes back to normal. That is the scene, and if you want the why in one sentence, it is this. Little Paulie did not just insult Eugene, he put a dangerous idea into the air, and Eugene punished him to make sure that idea died right there. But the deeper reason Eugene beats him is not only about the joke itself. It is about what that joke threatens in a world where masculinity is a religion and reputation is your safety deposit box. In that crew, the difference between being seen as strong and being seen as weak is not a personal insecurity. It is life and death. These guys live on stories, and stories become currency. A man's image decides how other people approach him, how they bargain with him, how they test him, and sometimes whether they think they can disrespect him without consequences. So when little Paulie makes that innuendo, Eugene hears more than a cheap line. He hears a challenge to his standing. He hears a possibility that people will start repeating it later, half joking, half serious, and that is exactly how trouble grows in that world. The show later makes it clear how lethal that topic is in their culture. Once the idea of a man being gay becomes believable to the wrong people, it stops being personal business and turns into a problem that they think they have to solve. Eugene knows that, even back here, because this is not a modern workplace with HR and policies. This is a crew that survives by fear, and fear depends on a certain kind of identity. The moment that identity gets questioned, especially on something they consider unforgivable, the crew's whole status system starts shaking. That is why Eugene's reaction is so extreme. The beating is not just anger, it is also a loud announcement. It is Eugene telling everyone there, including the guys who laughed, "You do not play with that subject around me. You do not even suggest it. Not once. Not ever. Because the real danger is not that Eugene's feelings got hurt. The danger is that Eugene's name gets bent into a shape that other people can use against him. And this is where the hierarchy matters. Eugene is a made guy. Little Paulie is not. That is the quiet math behind the whole incident. Little Paulie is connected, he is useful, he is around, but he does not have the same protected status. In that structure, breaking balls is not a free-for-all. You can joke, but you are supposed to know your place. The little Paulie oversteps because that is what he does. He wants to look fearless and equal even when he is not. He wants laughs. He wants the moment. The problem is that the moment he chooses is the kind that can poison a man's standing. And Eugene, being higher up, is allowed to respond in a way that someone lower down cannot. It also matters where they are. A construction site is basically their stage. It is a public place that they treat like private property. It is a perfect location for enforcing social order because there are witnesses, and witnesses are part of the point. If Eugene did that in a back room at the club, it would still be violent, but it would be contained. Here, it is seen. People will talk about it. Little Paulie will wear it on his face. Everyone will understand what it meant. The beatdown becomes a lesson that travels without needing anyone to explain it. Finn being present adds another layer. Eugene's beating is one of the first big moments where Finn truly understands what he has walked into. The show uses Finn as the audience's nervous eyes. He is not part of the life, so he reacts like a normal person would. He freezes. He looks away. He tries to act like he did not see what he saw, and then those guys casually try to smooth it over. That contrast is the point. Violence in their world is not rare. It is routine. And routine violence is more frightening than a random outburst because it means it can happen anytime and nobody will stop it. So why does Eugene specifically snap instead of just telling little Paulie to shut up and keeping it moving? Because Eugene is the kind of guy who carries pressure quietly, then releases it suddenly. He is not the loudest character, he is not the biggest personality, but when he erupts like a switch got flipped. That personality trait matters because men like Eugene often live with something dangerous inside them, a mix of resentment and the need to prove they belong. The Sopranos is full of guys who want respect, but Eugene feels like one of the guys who needs it. Some guys already have a natural aura. Eugene does not. He earns his space by showing he can be as hard as anyone else when it counts. And that leads to the next layer. Eugene is not only policing the joke, he is policing how people perceive him. In that life, if you let one person make you the butt of a certain kind of joke, more people try it. That is how you get tested. That is how you get treated as a soft touch. Eugene cannot afford to be the guy who lets that slide, because then he becomes the guy you can say anything to. And once that happens, you start losing control of the room. If you are made, losing control of the room is not just embarrassing, it is dangerous. Little Paulie also picks the wrong target. He thinks Eugene is safe to joke with because Eugene is sitting there, blending in, acting normal. But Eugene is not Paulie Walnuts. Eugene is not the kind of guy who turns everything into a comedy routine. Eugene is more serious, more literal, and more likely to interpret a joke as disrespect, especially when it hits a nerve that cannot be publicly discussed. Some guys in that crew can take humiliation and repay it later in small ways. Eugene chooses the immediate response. It is a message that says, "We are not even negotiating this." Now look at how the crew reacts after the beating, because that reaction explains the why too. Nobody rushes to defend little Paulie. Nobody acts shocked. There is no outrage, no meeting, no real consequence. Vito does not punish Eugene, he manages the scene. That tells you that, in the crew's eyes, Eugene did not do something unthinkable. He did something that made sense in their logic. Little Paulie took it too far. Eugene restored order. The only real concern is the optics, the story they will use if anyone asks, and how quickly they can get the job site back to normal. That normal reaction also shows how violence and status work in their ecosystem. Little Paulie's beating is almost like collateral damage from being low enough on the ladder that you cannot safely talk crazy. Eugene is high enough to enforce the rules. Little Paulie is low enough to be the example. That sounds brutal, but that is the structure. If you are not protected by your rank, you are protected by other people choosing not to harm you, and that protection can disappear in one sentence. There is also something darkly realistic about the specific topic Little Paulie uses, because it shows how their world uses manhood as a weapon. Little Paulie is not making a joke about Eugene's shoes or Eugene's hair. He goes for the one thing that those guys treat like a stain that cannot be washed out. He uses it because it is powerful, and Eugene reacts because he knows it is powerful. This is a world where insults are ranked. Some insults can be laughed off. Some insults challenge your standing. Some insults suggest you are not really one of them. This one is in that last category, and The Sopranos always connects sex, power, and shame. This beating fits right into that theme. These guys act like they have all the freedom in the world, but they are trapped in an image of masculinity that they did not invent and cannot escape. They spend money, chase women, brag, and posture, but a single rumor can make them panic. That is the irony. The men who act toughest are often the most controlled by what other men might say about them. Eugene's violence also fits the episode's larger idea. Unidentified black males is about blame and denial. Tony blames black guys for things instead of facing guilt. The crew uses black guys as a fake explanation when violence happens. It is a pattern of avoiding the truth, so the fact that Vito immediately reaches for that excuse after Eugene's beating is not random. It is the show underlining how these guys keep themselves safe, mentally and legally, by turning reality into a story that protects them. The story does not have to be believable, it just has to be convenient. And if the system around them already expects crime equals unknown black males, then the excuse slides through with less resistance. Now, if you zoom out and ask why the show even includes this moment, it is doing two jobs at once. One, it warns Finn, and by extension the audience, that this world runs on sudden violence. Two, it sets up the later tragedy around how that crew reacts to anything connected to homosexuality. You do not get the full weight of that later storyline unless you first see how casually lethal the culture around it is. Eugene's reaction is not a one-off. It is a symptom. It is the crew showing you early that this topic is treated like a threat to the whole identity of the group. That is also why Eugene does it in such a humiliating way. The bottle, the kicks, the blood, it is all overkill for a joke, but it is not overkill for a warning. Eugene is not trying to win a debate. He is trying to erase the idea from the room. He is trying to make sure little Paulie never repeats it, and that no one else even thinks of repeating it. In their world, the harshness is the point, because fear is the only thing that travels faster than gossip. And what about little Paulie? Why does he do it in the first place? Because he is the type of guy who survives by being around stronger men and entertaining them, and that creates a dangerous habit. When you are not the toughest guy in the room, you compensate with jokes, with mouth, with being one of the guys. Little Paulie wants to be seen as fearless. He wants to show he can talk to a made guy like they are equals. But he misreads the room. He thinks everything is still playful. Eugene knows that play can turn into a story, and stories can turn into decisions. That is the difference between someone who has real status and someone who borrows status. There is also a cruel truth here. In that world, the punishment often depends less on what you did and more on who you did it to. If little Paulie made that same joke to a guy who liked him, maybe he gets a warning. If he made it to a guy who was already irritated, maybe he gets smacked. He made it to Eugene on a day where Eugene was not in the mood to be anyone's clown, and he got the full version of the lesson. The Sopranos is constantly showing that the rules are real, but the enforcement is emotional. The rules are a framework. The mood of the guy with power decides the outcome. This is why Eugene gets away with it with basically no repercussions. In a strict version of mafia etiquette, you cannot just smash a bottle over someone's head without blowback, especially if that someone is connected to a bigger name. But The Sopranos is not romantic about honor. The show is honest about how messy the modern crew is. Rules exist, but they are often bent when it is convenient, and nobody wants to start a bigger problem over an unmade guy who got mouthy. Also, the beating happened on a construction site that is supposed to be under their control. It is their environment. If anything, it reinforces that control. And the big picture reason nobody makes it a major issue is that they have bigger fires burning all the time. The crew is always juggling money problems, personal drama, law enforcement pressure, and internal politics. A beating that can be filed under "he was breaking balls and went too far" does not rise to the level of a crisis. It is another day in a violent business. What makes it memorable is the clarity of it. That scene is one of the cleanest examples of how fragile their version of respect really is. Eugene is not defending a code of ethics. He is defending an image. Little Paulie is not challenging a philosophy. He is chasing laughter. And Finn is not witnessing a fight. He is watching a culture reveal itself in one sharp moment, where a joke becomes an emergency and a bottle becomes the punctuation. So the real answer to why Eugene beat up little Paulie is layered. On the surface, it is because little Paulie implied Eugene was gay, and Eugene took it as a disrespectful line he could not allow. Under that, it is about status, because a made guy cannot let an unmade guy put that kind of label on him without losing face. Under that, it is about fear, because in their world, that kind of rumor can spiral into something lethal, and Eugene instinctively tries to crush it at the source. Under that, it is about personality, because Eugene is the type who snaps fast and hard when he feels his pride is threatened, and under all of it, it is the Sopranos showing you again that these men are not free. They are trapped inside a performance of toughness, and when the performance gets threatened, they reach for violence the way other people reach for words. That is why the scene lands the way it does. It is not just a random beating. It is a demonstration of the crew's real language. Respect is not requested, it is enforced. Boundaries are not explained, they are proven. And once you understand that, you understand why Eugene did not just laugh the joke off. In that life, letting it slide is not being cool. Letting it slide is letting the room decide who you are. Eugene refuses to let the room decide. He decides with a bottle, with boots, and with the kind of silence afterward that tells you everyone understood the message.